Like, how do you think Arakni voice sounds like?
Actually sounds.
Yeah.
My name's Arakni. I'm here to teach you how to assassinate. He also could be a Batman situation. I'm Arakni, Huntsman.
Or he's just like,
Slice.
hey guys, it's me, Arakni.
Yeah.
And then
He
his
also
second
could be
head
like,
starts talking. Shut up.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, welcome to the Attack Action Podcast. We have a very special deck tech episode today with Taylor Morrow, the Falcon of the West, the Lurker of the Shadows, Assassinator, Regicider, and just all around good guy. Good morning, Taylor. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent, Colin. Thank you for that fun intro. Well done.
I'm learning new tricks here. Yeah, so today we are talking about Arakni Huntsman. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I think Arakni's hero ability is one of the most fun. Doing things that other people can't do and with like your deck or their deck is like very fun. You're just like, show me that card. All right. Now put it on the bottom. And they're just
Yeah,
like, fuck.
absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the ethos of this whole deck tech is if you want to have like a bitchin' time playing a really fun hero with some really fun tricks and some things that are unique currently in the game of Flesh and Blood, then this is the deck for you. I've found it to be uh, just like one of my favorite decks I've ever played. I think
Yeah.
and we've been in this game a long time, so it is at its current iteration super fun, and I think has still room to grow into the metas moving forward. So
Yeah, 100%. And I think that that's why we in our little Discord, we're all like, "Come on, Taylor, just do a deck tech," because you've been really enjoying it. We've been enjoying hearing you talk about it and kind of see how your thoughts and you know adventures have gone. So yeah, very excited to bring this because it seems good. It's got some problem matchups, but who doesn't these days? We're heading into a new meta soon, so anything goes. So Arachne might be your new best friend. So let's jump right into this deck here. So
awesome.
what what do you want to do as Arachne? Like I feel like with the assassins, I think my main thing I always feel like is either I'm doing just the same thing every time, and I'm not sure how to like get there.
Right. Yeah. So I think Arachne kind of has kind of 2/3 game plans. One is you run them out of threats, right? And you can do that in two ways. One, you like banish all of their cards, and then they don't, or you banish their key cards, and so their threat density is like much lower. Or you can play the game long enough to where they just naturally do that by trying to kill you and attack you, and then they're in their graveyard, so you've blocked enough, and now you're not close enough to life to where, or to death, to where you can take a couple of hits and keep applying pressure, and then they're going to have to block. And that's kind of the third thing, is that you can, in some mashups, kind of rush them down, chunk their life total, and then all of a sudden now they have to respect your attacks. And then once you're in that zone, you can really push your other game plans on them, which is getting rid of their cards or making really good trades. So example of that is like anytime you send a 0 for 4 attack, that's like all of your game plans in one. So like plunder the poor, right? So It's a 0 for 4 in red. If it hits, you banish the top card, right? So if they don't block that, that's great. You're dealing 4 damage. You're getting a card off of the top, and you've got to peek at the top card, and you've either sent that to the bottom because it's not a great late game card, like a blue maybe, if the deck doesn't want to see blues late, or maybe it's something like 3 of a kind, and you're like, well, if they block this, I'm going to send this down, and that's not great late game, and then you can get like an arrow off the top or something like that. And then it gets you a silver, which is half of a block point later, which is really great. And then it chunks their life total down 4 damage. And then if their game plan, or excuse me, then if their decision is like, well, I don't really want to take a whole 4, but I'll just block with 1 card, take 1 damage, you still will banish that card, you still will get that silver. And that's an even better trade, is that you get a silver, you deal a damage, and you take 2 of their cards. So now 1 of your cards equals 2 of theirs. And if you do that enough with filtering their deck by putting cards on the bottom or making sure they stay on top so they get banished, then you have a lot more control the later the game goes on. Mm-hmm. And then if they just block it because they don't want to lose the card on top because you like peeked at it and you're like, leave it on top, and they're like,
yeah,
I'll block with 2 cards. Then you're still getting 2 cards and you're trading 1 card for 2, and that's a totally fine turn cycle.
Amazing.
Does that answer your question?
So much. I think we're done. Just do that, win games. Arakni
there you go.
is the coolest, has the most flavor. The end. Now, I think you brought up 2 great things here. One is Arakni's ability interacting with contract cards, looking at the top of the deck, contract cards themselves giving you silver, which then synergizes with all your cool equipment, which, like, honestly, that's like part of the reason to play Arakni.
Absolutely.
Is the cool equipment that you can block, use its ability, and then get back and block and use its ability again because they help you do that. And it's like super cool. And
yeah,
I've been playing Azuri, and I'm just like, I want to play the Mask of Perdition. I want to get buyback my stuff.
Yeah.
So, next week after watching this or recording this, I'll be on Arakni again. So, but yeah, so I think those are the 2 big, skills of Arakni, is the using the equipment to power your, it's like the synergy of his ability or their ability and the equipment. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. It's a little matchup dependent. So some things where decks are like willing to block you more. Something like a Bravo has a better ability to block a lot of your 0-for-4s and that sort of thing. It makes it a little bit harder to get your silver and loop the equipment, which is fine. You just have like a separate game plan. But once you get it, like against ninjas, rangers, decks that they can't afford to block you because then they can't apply enough pressure, and that means the game's going to go on longer, and that means that's when you're at a more advantageous state. So once you kind of understand your matchup is when you can really start leveraging your equipment. So like things like you can go off of a tunic resource and 2 cards into a deck that doesn't want to block you, like a Lexi, or even a Phi. Their cards block for 2, and they need all of them to attack you with. So you come in with Annihilate the Arm, you look at the top card and you go, ooh, that's pretty good. It's for 5 damage. They're definitely going to have to give me 2 cards. I doubt they're going to do that. I'm going to leave that on top. Then the 5-player sits there and thinks about it for a long time. And then they go, no blocks. And you just, you go, boom, black text. And then it gets go again. And then your Plunder the Poor from Arsenal comes out. And you banish the top card and they have all attacks. So you get a silver. And then Plunder the Poor comes out. You get a look again. And you're like, it doesn't matter. Because, well, it depends on what it is. But you either leave it or bottom it, depending on what it is. If it's a blue, you could maybe bottom that. So then they're just like drawing blues, and those are really easy to block and not threatening. And then you banish that, and you're most likely to hit, because I don't know of any 2-cost cards really that Fi's running. And then you get another silver off of that. And so, assuming you've blocked already with your black techs, you then have used them, you've dealt 9 damage, and you got your 2 silver back. So on the next turn, you can buy them back, block with them again, and then set up a double contract, right? Mm-hmm. And you might even you probably actually get 3 silver off of that, because the combat chain is not broken. So if you attack with 2 contract cards in the same combat chain, off of the second one, both contracts are live. So it'll proc twice off of the same card. So for example, in our example, if you go Annihilate the Armed, black text, Plunder the Poor, and the next card that comes off the top is something like Lava Vein Loyalty, which is an attack that costs 0, that fulfills Plunder the Poor and Annihilate the Arm, and that gets you 2 silver off of just Plunder the Poor. And so you would have 3. So which is a really great number.
That's that's awesome. I forgot all about that. That's super cool. Yeah, I think
it's huge.
That's where I think Arakni gets hard to play, is like, I think you got to be a little bit patient, wait for some of those turns. Your Tunic, you got to block out a bit more than I'm generally comfortable with. And then, you pop off with your black tech whispers. Is there, I guess we'll talk about this maybe. We'll talk about it maybe in matchups. But like, I think the thing with black tech that's always hard is if they just stuff you with a defense reaction, and then you're just kind of like, oh, well, I don't get to play this other card, and it just kind of feels a little
right.
Bad.
Yeah, so you do have to play around that. So in certain matchups, like let's say you're in an assassin mirror, so you're playing a Zuri, that's when you would bring in your nerve scalpel, and you would try to have you have to make it a 3-card hand to play around some certain things. Or a 2-card hand is fine too. You might not get to break black text, but a big play pattern a lot of the time is like have a blue, have a yellow, and dagger, and then 0 for 4. So it makes it hard for them to block. And initially, you'll always go Spider's Bite, because you're like, that's the most common cards they have are attack actions. But it's still a 0 for 4, and that still takes 2 cards to fully block it out. Like a Leave No Witness or something like that. So when you run Nerve Scalpel, and the decks have Sink Below's, Fate Foreseens, those sort of things, you Nerve Scalpel first with your extra card. Because then when you come in with Leave No Witness, it still will take them 2 of their attack actions to block, but they can't get the value off of a 1-card block on your 0 for 4. So maybe you get a piece of their equipment, which you have to get at some point anyway, so that's fine, and then you get a card from hand, but they can't get the value off of their defense reaction that way, especially late game when they've already maybe used some of their equipment, and you nerve scalpel so they can't cleanly block it. So those sort of things happens. The other way you get around it is we're running 3 red cut to the chases, 3 yellow shreds, and you can set it up to where they can't play around you having an attack reaction. If they do, they have to give you 3 cards on one of your attack, and then you're totally fine with that.
Nice.
Either way, because that plays into your other game plan of the game going longer and them running out of threats and that sort of thing. So that's how you can get around getting stuffed. Is once they see you have a cut to the chase at some point, when they go no blocks, and you just like slap down your cut to the chase on your like annihilate the armed or whatever, and all of a sudden they've taken 8 damage. They then now know they have to like play around it. Or then, you know, they maybe are playing, they're like, oh, I'll block with 2 cards, and then you cut to the chase them and break black text, and then come in with another attack, and then break mask and get 5 silver. They're just like, they put their hand on their forehead like this and look at their cards and think about how much they just got blown out by Arakni.
And the cards that they just banished, and like, damn.
Yeah.
That Art of War would have been pretty nice.
Pretty nice. Now it's gone.
Very cool. So I think we'll get to attack reactions next. But I did have a question about one last one for Black Tech, and then kind of getting to the Mask and Shriek, mostly because Shriek is a newer card. I guess it kind of applies to any of them. Are you ever just like, I'm just gonna break this because I've blocked with it, and I can just buy it back, and I want to, rather than get the full value of its ability, I'm just gonna like get more value from block, and then eventually I'll get the value from the ability. Like, or are you always trying to maximize both sides of it?
Like everything in Flesh and Blood and in life, there's nuance. So if it's like still pretty, if it's pretty early in the game, you know, I would say early to mid game, and you kind of have a stockpile of silver, which happens because if you, in our original example, if you break Mask on that Plunder the Poor and you banish another card, you sometimes get 5 silver. If you compare Black Text and Mask in the same turn with 2 contracts live, you'll just get 5 silver, which allows you to buy back both of those pieces of equipment on the next turn. And then so you're like 1 silver ahead. So then you can, you might have a little stockpile. So my point being is that if you're still at a part in the game where blocking breakpoints is important, I sometimes will break Mask even though it won't hit, or you know, I've already blocked with it and I just have the 2 silver or something like that. Early mid game, you don't want to do it because you want to maximize that value. But then late game, when they're blocking, where they have to block, they have to respect you. And for one of the ways for you to get an advantage is to gain a health, basically by breaking your equipment and then re-equipping it, is pretty powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Shriek Razors. How are you finding this card? Do you have Flick Knives even in here anymore, or is it just Shriek Razors?
I don't. Okay. I took it out I took Flick Knives out because I wanted to force myself to play it at ProQuest without like the bail me out thing I know a lot about. But so Shriek Razors is excellent. It fills, so when we did a few months ago the we build you build, and we were playing Arakni Solitary Confinement and Blitz. I was running Redback Shroud over something like Tunic and that sort of thing, because you just want the one reset or set one time to like push damage over. But it has the same, like, I can block with it first and then use its ability. Like, its ability is still available even after I block with it, rather than where one of the things that's hard for me, or like constraining about Flick Knives, is I can't block with it then flick a knife. I have to save it to where I flick a knife, then I can block with it. Where Shriek Razors is different. I can block with it first. And people do have to respect it, and if they don't play around it, then you teach them very quickly that you need to play around it. Boom, here we go. And then if they do play around it, perfect. It's doing its job all on its own. You know.
Nice.
Was that answering your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
So
it,
you
it
you
feels
have to play
good.
the game. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say it feels good as a card just because it's doing a very similar thing to Flick Knives, where it's just like, hey, you know, 1 damage might come in here, you know.
Yeah.
I think, and then, but it seems a little more straightforward. But it has that kind of like passive effect of like they have to think about it,
Yeah.
which is like cool. But I
And
agree, like being able to block with it and use it feels more straightforward. It's not like, I don't know. Flick Knives
it's
is, like,
easier to get the
complicated.
value out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you play into it, right? You have to play the game like you have Shriek Razors also. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you don't need to dagger. You can just send a card, have a card, and then it could be anything. It could be, then they have to play around you Shriek Razoring. They have to play around the cut. They have to play around the shred, you know, or maybe it's just a D-react you're arsenaling or something like that. So they have to play around it. A great way to think about Shriek Razors is it's basically breaking scales that you can buy back, you know?
Yeah.
Like we all know how powerful breaking scales is. Like you have to think about it the whole game. It's the same thing with Shriek Razors.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about attack reactions. There's a couple tasty ones in here, and I wanna hear about how you're using them.
Perfect. So I will start with first the caveat of you have 2 little sets. You have shreds and cut to the chases, and your shreds are yellows and blues, so you can easily pitch those for second cycle. You can wind up in this situation when you're first playing this deck, like, okay, we're gonna get attack reactions second cycle, so I'm gonna try to make sure I bottom them. And then all of a sudden you draw a hand that has like a blue Plunder the Poor and 3 attack reactions, and 2 of them are shreds, and the other one's a blue cut to the chase. And you're like, uh-oh, this is pushing no damage, you know? I'm threatening 3 damage with a shred and maybe a dagger or something like that. And your opponent, like, you know, doesn't have to block, and there's no way, or like they do have to block, but there's no way for you to punish them, and you're stuck with like all of these attack reactions. And so you pitch them, and then your deck gets thinner, and then you draw up, and you're like, I still have no attacks. You know, I only have attack reactions, so I can't. The best thing I can do is like send a dagger because I have no attacks. That feels bad. You have to be careful that like you're not pitching too many of them. Block with them, it's fine, you know. So like cut to the chase, you can play first cycle as soon as you see it, you know. And that's one where it's really, really good and serves 2 purposes, because you don't need them to block, so it pushes more damage than they were originally thinking of taking, and then also forces your game plan of getting 2 silver while using black text on the same turn to buy it back and then threaten that game plan later. You'll really feel it when sometimes you fuck up and bottom a card when you shouldn't have, because you know it's going to hit, but you were like, you play too many, you're playing mind games, and you play one with yourself on accident and bottom a card, and then you banish a card and it's an unknown, and you don't get a silver, and you get 1 silver off of your 2 attacks, and now you can't buy back black text and have that play pattern available, and you can definitely feel way weaker when thinking through your lines. But so cut to the chase helps you enact that game plan. And then shreds are very good, are much, as we know, way better later, and way better if your opponent is willing to block you right away. Or if they're like, I'll give you 2 pieces of armor, and you're like, ha, shred goes through. armor counts for nothing.
And for anyone who doesn't know,
yeah,
armor with temper just
Dunzo.
dies.
Just dies if you get shredded.
I feel like anytime you can shred some armor with temper, you do it immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tons of value because then they don't get the extra block, which is great.
Love it.
And then in this, we have one copy of Concealed Blade, and that's just basically because it's a blue block for 3 that I needed, and it's another little like cheeky attack reaction. But it's a flex spot, which we'll get, I think, to maybe the particular cards in the deck. Go ahead.
Are you ever using its equip ability, or no? Not right now.
We don't have a way to get rid of our daggers, so it's doesn't have as much synergy. But it was just a blue block for 3 that pushes over a cheeky amount of damage. It's basically copy number 4 of blue cut to the chase.
Nice.
Then kind of in the sideboard, I guess, in quotations, I have 2 pummels and 2 razors.
Yes.
And so razor's very good because it's basically another black tech activation off of a tunic resource. So you can come in with Plunder the Poor. They don't block. Tunic. Bam. Razor. They take 7 damage. You now get Go again. And then you can play Sack the Shifty or something like that, without having to break black text, which is really good. And it also, works on your 1 copy of Death Touch, whereas Cut to the Chase does not. So that's kind of nice.
Ooh, Death Touch for 10? Or no, for 9?
For 9 is pretty spicy.
That's tight.
And then you have 2 pummels. And so that's when you, let me check my notes. It's when your opponents are really, more willing to block you, or like when a pummel would, win you the game kind of on the spot by just destroying their tempo, because you have really good pummel targets. Like if you can pummel a surgical, pummel a CNC, or pummel an already dead, like that's 10 damage or 8 damage. But pummel's hard to play first cycle, so the game has to be slow enough to where you can pitch stack them together with one of those things. But it's if you get a surgical off with a pummel, and it's they're all pretty easy with tunic, a blue tunic resource up in one of your 2-cost attacks makes pummel like pretty easy to pull off. And then when you surgical extraction them, they have to get rid of 2 cards from their hand, and if they blocked at all, they have no hand.
Yeah.
And they've taken damage, so it's very, very good. And the reason you run 2 of both of them is I don't want to see them that often because they're blocked for 2s. But I don't want them to get buried in the deck by only having 1 copy of each. So I want to make sure I see them so I either can pitch stack them or get them at some part of the game, but I don't want too many of them. So there are 2 of.
All right. This happened to me the other day, so I'm going to ask you, pummel and surgical happen. What order are you resolving those hit effects in?
I would resolve surgical's hit effects first.
Okay.
And then the pummel. And then the pummel.
The pummer.
Trigger.
Get that pummer.
The pummer.
It's our new term. I like that. How many pummers running?
How many pummers you running? Yeah, that's what I would do, because I would want the agency before my opponent has the agency. So if I can get the blue out of their hand to get a silver, and then they're forced to get rid of their baller card and then have a card they can't pay for in hand, that's a good scenario. So that's what I would do.
Hell yeah. Pummel, I've just decided, pretty recently is just the most fun thing to run. So anytime I see it, I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's hella fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hella heck of fun.
All right. So let's talk about some like specific key cards in the
Sure.
deck, and how you're using them. How you got to set them up, and when they shine.
Well, so we can start with Already Dead, I guess, is a new card that people are wondering about, I suppose. And it's very, very good. It fills a nice little hole Arachne had, which is like you're able to do more damage now. And you basically can do 3-card 9. Paying for Already Dead and then cut to the chase is 9 damage, which is a buttload of damage, you know? And it hits its contract is really cool because for two reasons. It hits some cards that you normally wouldn't get silver off of, like equipment, because it banishes stuff from the combat chain and where it blocks, or instants or reactions, and that sort of thing. So it still can make you silver. It still gets a lot of damage through, and there's some cheeky plays like you can play Plunder the Poor. This is a big scenario, but play Plunder the Poor. They block with armor and a card. You cut to the chase, go to 7. They block for 5. They take 2. You break black text. You get go again. You play Already Dead. And then they're like, oh, okay, cool. They maybe block with 1 card because it's 6 damage, and then they take 3 more damage. Well, you get to banish anything from the combat chain. So that piece of equipment they blocked your Plunder the Poor that you got over the top with, you can banish that, get a silver, and you say, bye-bye, Iron Song versus, you are now gone.
Bye bye. Yeah,
So,
I love that. That's like,
yeah.
it's probably something you shouldn't depend on, but when you can get it there, it's spicy.
Totally.
It's pretty spicy.
It also because it doesn't have like what's the word? It's not as easy to figure out what silver they're gonna get off of Already Dead. That a lot of times people maybe like block it with 1 card or just block it with a piece of armor or not block it at all. So it's a great like sometimes free 6 damage into black text into another 4 damage attack, which is just 10 damage. And then you can, if you already had a silver, all you need is 1 silver to get your card back, to get black text back. So you don't really need Already Dead to make you 1. You could maybe get 1 off of Annihilate the Armed, Plunder the Poor, etc. So you can play it in that way too. Is that like they think you maybe have a shred in Arsenal. They're like, no blocks. I don't want to get blown out. And you're like, haha, joke's on you.
Yeah.
So you have those plays with that.
Very cool.
Other key cards, right? Leave No Witness. I think we all know how good that card is. It's one of the best contracts in Assassin for sure. Another key card is 3 copies of Eradicate. It's another card your opponent has to respect, because anybody who's gotten 4 cards banished off of the top of their deck from not even respecting Eradicate knows how like powerful losing a whole hand of cards is. And then when you pair that with your Cut to the Chases or Razor, then all of a sudden you lose 7 cards. And so it's just another card that forces your opponent to interact with you in some way. And if they don't, you're going to blow them out, which is pretty awesome.
Have you banished 7 cards off Eradicate?
Yeah. They're just like, they just go like, what are the odds? And you're like, pretty good. Bing. And then you're like, hey, I made 2 silver. I got rid of a Codex and a Rain Razors. That's fun.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah. And you want to force interaction because that puts you into one of your game plans. And then Surgical Extraction, also a card they have to respect, right? Because it blows up their hand. So those 3 cards are really good. plus already dead. The spice inclusion in my deck is Sack the Shifty.
Ooh.
So a lot of assassins are running Slay the Scholars in this slot to hit non-attack actions and to like somehow help their wizard matchup. That is impossible to win anyway right now. So Sack the Shifty I put in because it's looking for cards with Go Again. So if you're against an Azalea, all of their non-attack actions have Go Again. If you're against the ninjas, tons of cards that have Go Again that are attacks. Etc. There's like most card, like that's the game, right? Of Flesh and Blood is having cards with Go Again. So you're more likely to hit a broader spectrum of cards that we know heroes are running, rather than trying to hit non-attack actions to help your wizard matchup, or like, oh well, if I hit a an ice quake or a read the glide path off my Slay the Scholar, that would be great. But Sack the Shifty would hit those anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, dog incoming. Hi, dog.
I think that's really it's a cool addition because the Venn diagram of non-attacks with and Go Again is like pretty good. So you kind of do. It seems like, especially given the meta and the heroes that we're likely to see right now, like you're likely to see both, so it seems like a good inclusion, I think. So
Yeah, and then like all of the dragons have Go Again.
Yeah,
they're non-attacks with Go Again, so you hit those, or any of those attacks in that deck, or a lot of them, right? Billowing has Go Again. Some other bullshit illusionist card has Go Again.
a lot of their cards do because they're non-attacks that turn into attacking things. Yeah,
awesome. Rake the Embers, etc.
The other bit of spice I want to talk about, and we don't spend a lot of time on it, but is good old Regicide. Just because
so good,
the coolest card in the game.
Okay, so just make sure it is the best card. Make sure you read it and notice that Cut to the Chase does not work on Regicide. Razor does, which is another reason to run Razor, and Shred also would work on it. But you cannot pitch stack a red Cut to the Chase with Regicide because it does not have Contract.
Shriek Razors too.
Shriek Razors works with it as well, right? So that can be part of your math here. And then you also have to know that like Regicide only kills royal heroes. So if you're playing Dashio and they're at 15 health and you Regicide them with your Razor and you're like, haha, and they're like, cool, I take 7, you die. And you're like, oh, right. Yeah. You have to be royal to lose.
Yeah. It is a game closer. Other thing to note for the defending side is you can't defend it with cards the same name in your banish zone. So that's an interesting one. Someone played it against me the other day, and I was just like, wait, how does this work? I think I even totally forgot that their die at the end of the game, and I think that's why the game ended. I thought he just scooped because we were like done. But it was very every time it's played, it's just like, hell yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, totally. So it's a cool card. You're obviously it's your extra percentage against Dromai or Viscerai, that you could kill them. But other than that, it's a blue block 3, and you're running it because of the more prevalence of being royal at this point. So
totally,
there you go.
Don't plan on it winning you games, but if it does, let us know, because it's always fucking cool.
I mean, Dromai's got to respect it, right?
Yeah.
And you run razors, so I mean, Conceal Blade also works with it as well.
Nice.
But so you have to, pitch stack it, not die, and then kill them.
Yeah.
With it. So, yep.
Awesome.
Hell yeah.
Do you want to talk about the defensive kind of package you got here, or do you want to move on to something else?
No, it sounds great. So Sink Below basically is in every matchup. And then you have 3 copies of Frailty Trap, 3 copies of Unmovable, and Oasis Respite. I think Oasis can be is a flex spot for me. It maybe saves you against Wizard that's going to kill you anyway, so it could be maybe better used. Frailty Trap, really good against Rangers, really good against the ninjas. Anybody who's got Go Again or Kodachis, giving them a frailty is very good. And then Unmovable against anybody who's going to have really big attacks against you, your Bravos, your Azaleas, your Dorinthias. At my ProQuest, the Unmovables literally helped me win that game by keeping me alive by playing them from Arsenal against a Dorinthia. So nice. They're pretty useful in that scenario as well.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Talk about how many blues you got in this deck? Resources.
17. And so we're trying to have at least a blue in hand if needed. And you run 60 every single time. You don't run anymore.
Okay.
Because you don't need it. So like part of the best part about playing Arakni is, well, the worst part about playing Arakni is that everybody reads your cards and doesn't know what they do, and so your games take a little bit longer. And you're like, come on, dude, just I just told you what it did. You don't need to read it, but I guess you're gonna read it. Okay, we'll take 100 years, and then they ask you all your play lines, and you're like, yes, these are the things I can do. So that's the worst part about playing Arakni, but also understandable. One of the, what the hell was I talking about? Best parts about Arakni is you run 60 and everybody goes, what's my sideboard for against Arakni? I don't know. Run all of my cards. So now they have like a 72 card bloated deck and awkward hands, and you're a well-oiled machine, and you're filtering their deck already, banishing their cards, etc. So their consistency is way down, even though they have 70 something cards. And then they don't block because they think they're healthy enough. And then so you can just kill them because they don't have enough power.
And not block with them.
Yeah.
Perfect sense.
Or do block with them, and that's even better. Yeah. Because it happens really fast when you can, you're basically evil Crown of Seeds, where you get a look at their card and put it on the bottom, and you filter their deck really quickly.
Nice. The evil Crown of Seeds. I love that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Okay, so speaking of looking at their cards and putting it on the top or bottom, how do you evaluate that decision? And I know it's going to be, I think this kind of plays into just having to know your opponents very well and their cards and their game plans. But, what, is there any kind of like general guidelines you follow, or, what are you looking at and evaluating when you see a card?
Yeah, so the two big things, the skill expression in Arakni is Arakni's hero ability, where you get a look at the top card, and how you're using your Black Text, your Mask of Perdition, your Shriek Razors, that sort of thing, and getting maximum value out of or above rate value out of those, right? Like if Mask of Perdition and Black Text get bought back each 3 times, You know, that's 6 extra health. That's 2 sigils of solace right there. Huge. Plus the other things they've allowed you to do: banish more cards, deal more damage, etc. And then the other thing is Arakni's hero ability. So knowing what your opponent's game plan is really, really helps. You know, there's obvious things like Miragai, right? You do not want to see Miragai or Chromai, so you friggin' bottom those every time. You know, unless you can guarantee that you're going to hit off of the top, right? That they can't play around your cut to the chase, your razor, or your shred, or that sort of thing, you know? And then you bottom it if it's like a power card, you know? So like a 3 of a kind, a rain razors, maybe even a codex, you all put to the bottom kind of on first look. You know, if we're going plunder the poor, no reaction. You have no reaction in hand. It's like another, maybe it's annihilate the armed, and your tunic's at 2, right? So you're not going to go black text into annihilate the armed, and you see rain razors. You're like, well, they could block this if I leave it on top, and there's a chance my opponent is going to block with a hornet sting and a arrow. Then they're just going to get this rain razors in their next hand, and I don't know what's in their hand. They might arsenal a 3 of a kind, and then I'm really screwed.
Yeah.
So you bottom it, right? And then maybe they do block, maybe they don't, and then you banish a card, and maybe you get a silver or not. But if you can keep that extra card, or that extra card is not annihilate the armed, it's cut to the chase, then you just leave that sucker on top. And then they block for Exaxes, and then you go over the top, you know? Or then they have to over block you, and it's really hard to play around 7, you know? Anyway, and then maybe you take you maybe are okay then if they give you 2 cards in their Hornet Sting to exactly play around 7. You know, you could then maybe just be like, well, I'll arsenal this cut, and then I'll have it for next turn, and their turn is going to be so weak that I will be able to continue to push my game plan. So knowing the takeaway is you have to know what your opponent is trying to do to you, or what they would like to do, and not allow them to do that. Like I was playing against Dorinthia, and anytime I saw a card that gave their Dawnblade go again, go into the bottom, you know, just because I didn't want them to continue to keep up that sort of pressure. And if I can filter through some of those cards and just put them on the bottom, because that's a matchup where I don't want to run them out of cards, because they'll run me out of cards. So I have to kill them. So I have to like take away their pressure.
Nice.
So was that helpful?
Yeah, totally.
Did I answer that question? Kind of
Yeah.
just was.
I mean,
was
it's
just going for it.
You know, it's nuanced, as you said, and other people like to say about many things. I think that's the main thing, and I did say this already, but you have to learn more about your opponents and how they play and what's important to them and what they could, you know, possibly have in hand, you know, all that kind of stuff. So you're paying attention. You have to know that. Then you have to pay attention to what they're pitching. You have to pay attention to, like, you know, what you've seen and what's in their graveyard and what you've already banished, you know, and all those things. It's like just extra information that you have to be able to process. So I think that's a hard part about playing Arakni at, you know, a higher level. But I think that's also like the really fun part too. So it's it's cool to hear your thought process there. Awesome. So I think we kind of talked about flex spots a little bit, but maybe just kind of call those ones out again.
Yeah, totally. So in this list, I put Smashing Good Time, which is a baller card, but it's got to be the right meta. So just the protest I went to the weekend before, somebody won with Dashio, and I thought maybe one of the things people would do is like just jump on that bandwagon to play it. And so I might see a few more mechanologists. So I kept that card in, or included that card. And I did play a dash round 1, so it was hella validated. And, but depending on your meta, you could cut that for something else. You could probably also, depending on how many wizards you have. I mean, the matchup is bad anyway, even with Oasis Respite. But you could cut Oasis Respite, and then kind of in the main-ish deck, my Concealed Blade could be another blue of a different kind, or you could cut a Pummel or a Razor, something like that, to give you access to a Flick Knives, which I think is fine. Running Flick Knives has its applications for sure, because it gives you like 1 more point worth of reach, and then if you run a Concealed Blade, it could give you 2 more points of kill power. So that would be fine. So that's kind of 6, 7, slots that you could play around with for sure, I think. But most of the other stuff is pretty, I think, non-negotiable in my opinion. Yellow Annihilate the Armed is just super, super good as well. It's a yellow breakpoint, and everybody runs attack actions.
Totally. I did have a question too. I see you're running Orbitoclast is like your main, one of your main daggers. What's the? I feel like usually I see Nerve Scalpel as kind of being one of the main ones. So I'm curious about your choice of that. Is it mostly just because of the meta, or? Yeah.
Well, in certain matchups, 2 daggers matter, but in most of the matchups, you only ever dagger once for the majority of the game. So Spider's Bite is usually your go-to there. Orbitoclast you run because you need it against Wizard and Dromai, even though those matchups are poor. You need it against Azalea. I mean, Dorinthia as well. And so if you have just the 3 standard daggers you kind of need are Nerve Scalpel, Orbitoclast, and Spider's Bite. And those basically pairing a combination of those 2, depending on the matchup, get you wherever you need to go. Nice. for whatever it is, because to swing 2 daggers is 4 resources, which is for the majority of the game 2 cards to do 2 damage, and your worst cards, Plunder the Poor, do 2 damage for a single card. So you only do that if you are flush with resources, or they're kind of Kodachi locked, dagger locked, as it were. So something like, if you're fighting, if your opponent's Dorinthia, then you can run Orbitoclast and Nerve Scalpel, right? And X-Nay your Spider's Bite. If it's something like Bravo, you can go Nerve Scalpel and Spider's Bite. And then for something like Dromai, you can go Orbitoclast, Spider's Bite. Something like a Ninja, you can also go Nerve Scalpel and Spider's Bite, because maybe they're running Flick Flacks, and then once that first Flick Flack comes down, you can go, okay, then we can play the old all dagger with my Nerve Scalpel first to force you to block with your attack actions, so that you don't get that 1 card block. So, yeah.
I think important to shout out to Nerve Scalpel works on all reactions, not just defense reactions.
Correct.
It's easily overlooked because it's generally thought to kind of get around the defense reactions. But when you play against someone like Dorinthia, where almost all their cards are attack reactions, very good there as well. All right, sideboard plan. What do you got?
So you just do it by feel. You use the force and you do it by feel. You basically have 54 cards. I broke this down into 54 cards, and then you have 6 cards you can add in. So that's some copies of your 2 different types of reactions. So 2 pommels and a razor, 2 razors and a pummel, and then some sort of other defensive card, basically. It's just kind of how you do it. Yeah. And you just there's no like strict guide. I think you can modulate those 6 cards however you want, based on your matchup and that sort of thing. And there's some general guidelines, like unmovable is clearly better against Dorinthia Bravo and Azalea than it is for Phi, right? And then like Frailty Trap is obviously better against Phi and Katsu, and Lexi, but Lexi's moving out, so those sort of things. And then razors are a bit better against your fast matchups, and pummels are a bit better against your slower matchups.
Nice.
So
yeah, I like that. It's very straightforward, intuitive, not too complicated.
6 cards, boom, done. And then obviously we got the null rune stuff. So if you happen to go up against a wizard, you can try to beat them, but probably lose. But you can go Arcane Lantern, null rune boots, and null rune gloves.
With Orbitoclast.
With Orbitoclast, yeah.
Lantern dagger.
And then if there's a rune blade, you can kind of figure out what is more important. Is a dagger more important? Is a shriek razor more important? Or are your black techs more important? Yep. I probably would keep both daggers and keep the black techs.
Nice.
If I was fighting a rune blade.
Love it. All right.
Yeah.
I think last but not least, how are your matchups? What are you excited to see, and what are your kind of end game win conditions for different classes and heroes?
Yeah, so I kind of categorize it in 3 categories. You either have to kill them or assassinate them, which is what I call when they get decked, when you get all their decks out of there. That's the full assassination. Or then I'm dead. So rangers and ninjas, you can assassinate them, right? So you want the game to go long, you want to banish a shit ton of cards, and they basically can, by the time they hit their pitch stack, after you've messed it up royally, it's going to be really hard for them to kill you. And that happens really, really fast, like way faster than you think it is. And if you're paying attention to what they pitch, that helps also. Like if Azalea pitches, has to pitch 2 non-attacks in a row, and you see a non-attack on top, you can try to keep track of like, okay, there's 2 non-attacks down there. So if I send this non-attack, that's 3, but then if they have an arrow, maybe that's going to hurt me late game. So those are some of the things you got to think of. Like, do I filter all of their arrows to the bottom so they only are drawing non-attacks, or do I filter all of their non-attacks to the bottom and they're drawing hands with no arrows? I'm still not sure what is correct. I've done the non-attack arrows and then they just pass when they like have one non-attack in hand, Skullbone Cross Wrap, it's a non-attack, and then they have 4 in hand and they're like, pass. Yeah. Or Blind Azalea, it's still no arrow, pass, which is maybe dicey. So maybe you want to go all arrows, but you can still assassinate them because they don't want to block. Same thing with the ninjas, against Katsu. If you see a 0 for a 0 cost blue, bottom that sucker, because now they have less chance of going Kadachi attack chains, right?
Yeah.
And they're not going to want to block either, so you can banish a shit ton of their cards and then get to their pitch stack where it really sucks, and they're like, why can't I kill you? Mechanologists are assassinate targets as well. They got a boost.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's going really easy. I mean, Teklovostin you can just straight up kill because his evos can't. You shred a steel soul memory and then it's gone. You
Yeah.
know, so that's pretty terrible. And then the assassins, when you get into the mirror, so you can do either. It depends on what their plan is. Like sometimes Azuris will run extra cards because they know you're going to banish more cards. But they're still pretty slow. So you could just kill them, because you're running a lean 60. You're sure, you have the tools to clearly battle them as they do you. But for, for you to not, for them to not lose to you because you banish so many more cards, they have to like maybe block you more, so then you can assassinate them. And if they don't block you, well, then that plays into you getting your black techs, triggering all of the time, so you can kill them. So, but the matchup's slow enough to where you could pitch stack pummel on your surgical and win the game that way, or your CNC or something like that, which happened round 2 of my pro quest. But my first, I had set it up really nicely. I got the ponder off of a codex, and it was pummel, and I was like, awesome. I'm 4 cards away from my surgical. I think I was like 4 to 6 cards away, something like that. Drew up my hand, no surgical. I was like, okay, cool. It's in these next 6 cards or something. And I let 1 point of damage through on like a plunder the poor. My opponent was, shout out to Levi, was running 1 card that would banish, or maybe it was even already dead. I can't remember. And the card he banished was my surgical extraction. And I was like, uh-oh, I only have 1 CNC left, and I'm unsure of where that is in my deck. Okay. And it was a bit of a lack of game management by me, but also a little bit of variance. So
yeah,
should have been a little bit more careful. So then I lost the game. But if I gotten that freaking surgical off with the pummel, it would have been donezo.
I would have had you. I had you if I didn't do that wrong.
Yeah, totally. 2 other decks you have to kill. You have to kill Dory because their weapon is far superior, and Warrior's Valor into Dawnblade is like you lose if you block that for 9 too often, because that's you're trading 3 cards for 1 of their cards. And you lose that, so you have to kill them. So you have to like mess with their pitch stack, and then pitch stack your own like back-to-back turns of like cut to the chase. That matchup can go that slow, or you just have to like really you're using razors and cut to the chases as often as possible in that matchup to try to kill them first, because you can't go late. They'll fatigue you. Same thing with Bravo. They have this thing called a Nothos, which is a gigantic hammer that does 6. And for the same amount of resources, you do 2 damage. And they do 6 damage. So you also lose that exchange as well. So you have to kill Bravo as well. So those pummels come in handy.
Nice.
And then what you're looking to dodge in the tournament is Wizards and Dromai. Those are your I'm dead.
Yeah.
So go get some lunch, scoop it on up. Do I think Arakni can get there against those decks? I think you can probably use those 7 slots I talked about to help in those matchups. And at this point in the game, I would probably try to figure out a better game plan into Dromai.
Yeah.
But with this current deck list, you should just scoop and go get some food, or like go take a pee and relax.
I mean, the good news is that with the prevalence of Dromai, it probably pushes down the Wizard. So like, you just got to dodge one of them.
Yeah, totally.
Except that one guy who shows up with Wizard all the time. Shout out to you, whoever you are.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. with the meta moving forward,
Yeah.
and what the collective brains of everybody can come up with, and what I can come up with, and that sort of thing to help get some equity into that. But you are really looking. You're the third tier down. You know, it's like if Dromai is the top, and then there are decks that are targeting Dromai, you're the guy who's like, well, I'm going to target the decks that are targeting that first deck.
Absolutely.
You know, that's where your sweet spot is in the meta. And then Brutes and Runeblades, Vincent, I think will have a very hard time. I don't think Vincent has a hard time against Arakni. You have plenty of blues. You have cards that you're willing to block, and if you put too many cards in their banish zone that they can't play out, then you're getting, then all of a sudden their 3 Deathly Whales in banish gain you 4 or net them -4 life points over the course of a few turns, and you've now just gotten a free 0 for 4. Viserai, unsure, he's not super prevalent, and
Regicide him.
you just regicide him, hopefully. And then your Brutes, I have played very few games into those, so I can't give you a definitive answer.
I feel like based off what you said, I feel like Levia, you get to put cards in their banish that they don't want, so that can net damage. And then Reinhardt could probably present some difficulty just by intimidating your cards and forcing you to block with things you don't want to.
Yeah.
So I think that one could be difficult, but it is not super prevalent currently, but is always a difficult opponent. So be interesting to hear about that later. But yeah, this is really awesome. I'm again stoked on Arakni. He's so cool.
He is very cool.
I want to play them. Just looking
we do have some listener questions from the Discord. Maybe we already hit these, but
what do we got?
Maybe we want to just touch on these. Zane asks, how often are you using Shriek Razors? Maybe only, once a game, but like I said earlier, they have to play around it, and if they don't, they get punished pretty hard. Patrick asks, why what's your list of stuff you've considered but didn't make the cut? Why red pummel over blue? Well, red pummel, if you don't know, has a bigger number on it than blue pummel, and if we're gonna run pummel, we're gonna pummel. We're not gonna mess around. List of stuff I've considered. Hurl is something I've considered. The give and take is also good to get back your codexes, or it's just like kind of 9 free damage over the course of the game because nobody blocks it because they're like, you're just gonna get back a codex. Or you could what did somebody say the other day? You could do like Cadaverous Contraband and then loop it with Memorial Ground when they block it, and you can just put it back on top,
Nice.
So maybe you can do that. Blake asks, I'm interested in the bluffing and indirect stress you are causing your opponent. When you can guarantee something that's on top with like one of your reactions or something like that, or you just know that they're not going to block you, like you're playing Fi and they're like, well, I'm not going to block this even if you did leave it on top. They definitely go through a moment like, shit, is that my Art of War? Is that one of my Lava Bursts? What card could that be that I'm going to lose right now? And is that important? And most of the time they go, the most correct thing is to just not block and let them banish it, but they definitely start playing weird when you leave it on top. They'll say it out loud, like, okay, so you left that on top. I have these, and then they check their graveyard, and then they check their banish zone, and then they look at their hand, and you're like, there are only 25 minutes left in the round, you know.
No.
And they're like, okay, you know. So
and for most people, that added having to think about every single card is, you know, it's another layer of fatigue that you're causing them.
Yeah, exactly. Which is fun, which is another reason to run Arakni, because those are really fun moments.
Mm-hmm. Other people are like, oh yeah, it must be this. And you're just like, shut up.
Yeah, and then you're like, yes, I did. I banished that. Ha ha ha. You have one less of those now. Superfan Thor Mike asks, what are some surprising overperformers / underperformers, if any of the latter? Overperformers, Sack the Shifty was a big overperformer in the Lexi meta. I really liked that, and you know, initially Already Dead was way better than I thought it was going to be. So those were two cards that were really good.
Nice. Yeah, the Already Dead plus Cut to the Chase is dope. You know, having a 0 cost reaction that pumps.
Yeah.
That is
a 6 cost attack. Yeah, it's huge.
6
you
power,
know?
yeah. That's
oh yeah, 6 power.
That is hella fun. Dude.
Yeah, quarter of your life total just gone in an instant, you know?
Shout out to that card again, just because of the art is so good with the shadow dying before the guy is like, it's one of the best arts on a card in this game.
Yeah, Assassin has really evocative pictures for sure. I'm also ready for them to do Dead Already as another card, but it's like maybe the yellow or the blue version of that, and it has a different effect, which would be cool. And then Thor Mike has one more question. Are there any for sure swaps you want to make to the list? Yes, I do. Obviously, I'm gonna, well, we'll see. Smashing Good Time could stay if Dashio becomes better. But I'm like not happy with Oasis Respite. So I'm looking to get rid of that kind of right away. And this one blue concealed blade could be moved. We could put in what's it called? Flick Knives as well. So those are some things I'm thinking about getting into, you know. But the rest of the stuff, the list is pretty tight. So
awesome.
I'm enjoying that.
Yeah. Well,
last thing before we get out of here, big shout out to Clement from France. He was on the
Plague Hive.
Yeah, he was on the Plague Hive and on the Eye of Ophidia Twitch stream in Toulouse for their PTI, and was a huge inspiration. And that deck tech on Plague Hive is really good, and he's a really good Arakni player and really smart.
Nice.
And you know, this list is basically a inspiration from that one.
Cool.
So huge shout out to him for sure.
I'll put a link down there. Also, the deck will be linked down there.
Sweet.
Just check it out, play it. Let us know what you think. How did it go? You know, how many times did you regicide someone? That's all I want to know.
I know. I still want there to be like one living legend point given out for every time you regicide somebody for the game win. There should be one.
I need like a Google search or Twitter alert that lets me know sometimes someone claims they regicide someone.
Yeah.
We should celebrate those small moments in this great game of ours. Well, Taylor,
Absolutely.
that was awesome. I figure out how I can build Azuri and Arakni at the same time, and I just don't know how to do it. So,
yeah, I mean, you literally could just put take Arachni's hero card and set it off to the side and put Azuri's hero card here. You know, you miss out on all of your like stealth cards to swap, so you never do Azuri things, but you could do that.
yeah. I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna build it and figure out which ones I have to swap, make a list, try it out
There you go.
because it's fun.
Cool.
But thank you for
It is fun.
sharing all your insights. I hope everyone tries this out. I think it's a great kind of underdog hero to really mess with the meta. You know, it kind of comes out of nowhere, and a lot of like cognitive overload related to what's going on here with the mind games
Totally.
and the bottoming and messing up what
Yep.
they're trying to do. So super cool. And yeah, thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Join our Patreon, whatever or not.
Yep.
But yeah, thanks, Taylor.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you, everybody who's paying attention out there. And yeah,
Yeah, happy hunting.
Arakni rise up. Yeah. Happy hunting. That's great. Love that.
Bye. You know, the best thing about the way we started
I
this,
know you were trying to get me to do a voice. I know. And then once you
you started it. You were just like,
Yeah.
Arakni knew this, and I was like, that was gonna be the bit I wanted to start with. So I was like, let's just roll into this, and hopefully Taylor catches on. And you did because you're a pro.
I'm a pro. Well done.
Thank you. You too.